the Marshalltown Pork Chop line. This was an industrial area on the east side of Marshalltown early in the days. It actually went up through an alley between 8th and 9th Avenue. And so the line went through up the alley. This was I think, built by the Chicago Northwestern and became a joint operation of the Northwestern and the Great Western. The MNCNL never had direct access in here to that I'm aware of. Now, of course, there's some experts on here who may know better, and I will certainly let them speak up. I may forever tell them to hold their peace. We'll just see how this goes. But if Marshalltown is got the Iowa River flowing through it, and here's a creek. The Iowa River was up in here, this area. If you know the area, Highway 30 runs through here, but this is the Chicago Northwestern main yard coming into Marshalltown. This is from the east. This is their double track main. And then this single track is in Minneapolis and St. Louis. That's coming up from the south. It comes into Marshalltown, parallels along through the yard, and at the west end, through a whole series of diamonds, crosses over the Northwestern double track and then also the Great Western single track. This line here is the Great Western single track coming through, and it runs about a block north of the Northwestern yard, paralleling it to the west end. So this, and as I said originally, I think this was built by the Northwestern. This is a map that Vaughn Ward loaned to me many years ago because I was intrigued by the meatpacking plant, which is up here at the north end. And then when I saw the map, I became even more intrigued, and I said, I've got to build this somehow, even though it's not MNCNL. Oops, just lost I got some loose connections on yeah, there I'm back with you. Maybe. Yep. I got a loose connection here apparently on my HDMI cord. Anyway, what intrigued me about this was one, it was joint operation. The Northwestern could come up this way. The Great Western came around this curve this way. And this is a single track up through here. There were 12 turnouts facing and trailing. And then there was a little bit of a switchback in here. Now, it may look like that this is a runaround or a passing siding, and it's not. There's no runaround up in here. You had to lay everything out in the yard before you ventured up here with the appropriate cars and appropriate end of your engine. The original line was built to about here, which I believe that's Main Street. And then as the meatpacking plant and other industries got built, the line was extended. And because this spur was already established with the what is the Dunham Bush operation, originally this was part of the Marshalltown syrup and candy. This spur was already spoken for, so they had to build out and around it and then come back in to continue up their alleyway. Someone once brought me a map showing that there was a connection here, but it was a proposal. It was never made because this spur was already dedicated to the Dunham and Bush foundry and was in dedicated service. So there never was a connection. So it was always just a single track with no runaround. And that's how I build it, and it confuses operators all the time. And I just sit back and giggle. So, but yeah, so let's take a little bit closer look at, I've got a lot of maps in here because I did tour this area one time and took a bunch of pictures, and those I think are slides that I cannot locate, and probably was before I had a digital camera, but I've got lots of pictures. So let's see what we can, or maps. This is again from this same map. And I know that Ron did something with Sanborn maps a few weeks ago. So he's introduced you to this line, which is also good. But again, you see where the Great Western's coming in, see how the Northwestern came in. We've got some diamonds here. This was there was a second curved track added in here for a spur coming back down to in later years. This line here, or this line, I should say, was the interchange between the Great Western and the Northwestern. And this was
Excuse me. I still
yeah.
have the first map up. There,
Oh,
now I got it.
well, I'm glad you're catching up, Clark.
Yeah, I'm slow.
Let me know if you have any more problems. So anyway, as I say, this line here was the interchange between Great Western and Northwestern. This line, actually in the early days, the Great Western had their turntable in here and a 3-stall engine house or roundhouse, which later became a 2-stall and eventually was a 1-stall. And then later the turntable got pulled out and this is where they had their stock pens. The Northwestern had their stock pens down in this area. Today, this is all Gerbich scrap iron. This whole area is now Gerbich scrap iron metalworks of some sort. This industry over here started out as a canning factory, later became Marshalltown Manufacturing, later became, it's been 3 or 4 different businesses of some sort over the years. But they have, you can see they've got a spur that comes down here, gave them access to the Northwestern. So, and of course the yard. So let's see if we can get to another, moving up the line a little bit here, you can see again the Great Western coming in, the Northwestern coming in. This is the what is known as the Fairgrounds property. Early on, there was a soda pop bottling company in here, and some of the maps will make reference to that company. Later, this was the county fairgrounds, and this track was used for unloading livestock coming into the fairgrounds, 4-H projects, etc. Today, I think it's either the county or the state has their garage and store all their trucks and stuff in here somewhere. So anyway, you can see this track coming up in here. You see a building marked the Lennox Foundry. Dave Lennox was originally a blacksmith in Marshalltown, and he was approached early, and he got approached by several different people with ideas, one for furnace and the other for what became Marshalltown Trowel. They were some bricklayers. They wanted better tools, so they approached him, the blacksmith, and he came up with a trowel design that morphed into what we know today as Marshalltown Trowel, which is the premier provider of brick laying tools, concrete finishing tools, etc. And if you've ever done any concrete finishing or brickwork, you've probably used a product of Marshalltown Trowel. You walk in any big box store, lumberyard, whatever, and you look for trowels, and you'll see the Marshalltown brand there. So, but this was all connected with Lennox, and so you'll see the Lennox name on some of the buildings and the maps as you look through the different maps. What's intriguing is this line came off here and came up in here, and then this switchback was added later. The 2 buildings here, there were signs, no clearance for a man. It was that tight in here. But this was all, it makes for an interesting switching layout. Marshalltown Syrup and Sugar Company, originally here, they had some barns for their horses. They had storage sheds over here on the other side of this track at one time. Like you can see there's a foundry in there. You see the name of Dunham Bush. They pretty much took over this whole area. They were a foundry operation that I think started providing supplies for Lennox Furnace. Lennox Furnace, they built in 1912 up off the map along the Chicago Great Western track here. But this was still the Lennox Foundry and the Lennox other building here for a long time. This is the building that has the sawtooth roof, as Ron likes to call it. Clear story windows to light up this building. The building finally, it's been torn down, it's gone. But when I did a walk through here, talked to a fellow, it was being used by a big furniture company based in Marshalltown for a storage warehouse. And he told me the rails were still on the concrete floor for when they were moving around the pots of hot metal in the foundry. They had never covered over that floor. So moving on, let's see. Here we move up, and there you can see with C.A. Dunham is a smaller operation, Marshalltown syrup and sugar. This is from a different railroad map, but you can see that C.A. Dunham is over in here. We've got a warehouse and coal and stuff. And then it's an empty lot, but there is a Fisher Controls built a building, yeah, I believe it was in here. And Fisher Controls made controls for Lennox furnaces. So you're starting to see a tie-in along this industrial line. So let's move on. We come up further. Yeah, it was
Hey,
WH
hey
Pride.
Doug,
Yes.
that was Nash Finch building who built that.
Nash Finch. Thank you, Roger. Yes. Yeah, because I see WH Pryor Company Foundry and Machine Shop. This, I think, became this was the not Lennox, Fisher Controls. Is that, I don't
Yeah,
know.
Nash Finch. It sat empty and Fisher's bought it.
Yeah, Fisher bought it. Okay. Yeah. See, I told you there were some experts here could speak up.
No, right. That building you're pointing at. That was when I was a kid. That was Dunham Bush's foundry.
Right here.
Yep, that's
Okay.
Bauman Street. That was their foundry. Was
All
that?
right. Yeah. There've been so many changes along this line through the years, you almost have to pull a map up and look at the date of the map to verify. But Roger grew up in this area. Clark spent some of his early formative years not too far from here, so they probably know it as well or better than I do in some respects. So
No, I went to Woodbury School the last couple of years, but I never paid any attention to this rail line, even when I lived there in the late 60s. And I had an uncle that worked up at Swift when I lived there, but I was not paying attention as I should have.
yeah. So well,
Why was it?
yeah, why was it?
Why was that, Clark, that you weren't paying any attention?
Uh, Let me see if I could. No, I can't spell it even. We'll leave it alone.
So anyway, you'll notice that we got Marshalltown Cement Products Company in here. Later was a concrete. They made things like septic tanks and sewer pipes and that type of stuff. You got Anderson and Empire Construction Company and Machine Shop. This was McGoogle Construction at one time, but later this, I believe, is where the grain elevator was built.
No, they're south of that yet, Doug.
They're south.
Yeah.
Well, let me go back here. I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, okay, there,
The grain elevator is right off Main Street, right there.
right there, yeah,
Yeah, that's where they were at.
yep, and the warehouse.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get to all this stuff eventually. And then of course we come up to the meatpacking plant. You can see on this map this marks Swift. It began in 1880s as Britton and Company. They in turn sold it to Roberts and Oakes. Robert and Oakes in turn rehabbed it, sold it to Swift. Swift in turn sold it to Momford. Momford in turn sold it to JBS. And it's still functioning. They're still slaughtering hogs so that we can have bacon for breakfast. So this building has been here for a long time. This track was a clean out track and also where they filled tank cars with byproducts coming out of the packing plant. Notice this single line comes down here, comes down to two tracks. Up here at the north end is where the stockyards were for unloading livestock. I believe this is the chute here in the stock pens, and then loading out meat products. Across on the other track, Marshall Packing was built in the 30s. They slaughtered beef and some pork. And then we had another company in here called Heilman Sausage, which made sausage, they probably got pork from this plant and so there was a lot of meat packing jobs in this area. Now I do have some maps that show this line extends on north and curves around down into the Iowa River Valley where there was a sand and gravel operation in the teens, early 20s. So, But that gives you a little bit closer orientation on the map, and of course, all the changes, unbelievable the changes that took place. Now, here's a Chicago Northwestern map from a different era. Flip it, you can see the Swift packing plant, but mostly you can see this extension of that second line going to a track is owned by McDonald Construction Company. So they were going down and getting gravel and rock, no doubt, for concrete work. So, but yeah, and there you Marshalltown Cement Products. As I said, this is flipped. So after Vaughn Ward loaned me the map, I went home. I was able to get some copies made and then started putting up bench work and decided to model it. This is a map of how I modeled that in 14 feet in HO. Of course, I had to flip it because of the way my curve was coming off my existing layout. And so the Swift plant should be on this side of the track, but it's over here. But you can see I've got, up at the Swift plant, we got stock pens, the Swift fertilizer building, their clean out track, meat packer. Here's Heilman Sausage, Marshalltown Packing. And then I condensed things a little bit. So there was an oil company in here for a while, Jobber. There was the concrete block work, which probably should be down here. But here's CA Dunham. Here's the Fisher factory. There was a scrapyard in here and a used car place for a while. Here's a Dunham and Bush foundry, Koppel Grain Company. Then we got Fisher Governor down here. Here's Marshalltown Trowel or Lennox. And then this is the syrup and candy building. Later became it started out as a carriage buggy works. They also had a building down along the tracks, building number 2. Later became the syrup and then the time that I walked the tracks, this was a North American Van Lines storage facility and place where they unloaded and stored your furniture when you were between houses. Today, I think it's just called Marshalltown Storage, or it was. Now, Marshalltown Trowel has bought up this property and expanded and attached themselves to it. So this is all Marshalltown Trowel in here now. We have the Marshalltown Manufacturing Company down here off that Y, and then love this name, Corn Belt Oil, another oil jobber in there. So, but this drawing was done by a United Kingdom British publication. Some guy online or read my articles and got hold of me and said, "Oh, that looks like a great little switching layout. And can we?" So I sent him a bunch of photos and stuff, and he drew this map up based on the photos that I sent him with the tape measure marked along it. So this gives you an idea of what I've modeled. Now, to give you an idea of the current space, I originally had this just as a peninsula. In the current house, I've been able to widen out the peninsula, and this is my sketch for the new yard and roundhouse I put in with the intentions of putting that 8th Street or 8th Avenue switching area on the back side of the peninsula, which is what I did. And I got a 42-inch aisle here and ran the main line down around the front edge of it. Narrowed it from the 30 inches, or no, it was 24 inches. I've added on a couple inches to get that. So anyway, let's see what I've got for some photos and information. Here is the Britain packing plant, circa 1900 in Marshalltown. We're looking from the east towards the west or northwest. You can see the stock pens here, the main factory. There's a steam engineer working. Here is a photograph, postcard photograph of the same plant looking towards the northeast. This is about, I'm going to say about 1915 or so. You can see some refrigerator cars, an Iowa Central gone in there. All the ventilators on top of the building. There's the stacks for the powerhouse at one time, and then an old barn of sorts. Here's another postcard, colorized, essentially looking at the same view. And of course, they did have some rolling stock. They had a tank car, probably for inedible oils or lard or something to that effect. Early tank car. This is Britton and Company sold to Robert Oakes in 1919. Robert Oakes was a packer in the Chicago area. They got their name painted on the building. They operated it for 1 year. Then they shut it down and it was closed for 14 years. And then in the height of the Depression, they reopened it in 34, wound up selling it to Swift in 38. And there was a rehab and remodeling of the plant between 34 and 38. But this is a nice photo showing you a little bit of what was there. They, of course, had their own refrigerator cars, meat reefers. This one was built new in 1926. But like I said, they were based out of Chicago, so they had another operation besides this Marshalltown one. Here's a story related to reopening the packing plant in 1934. Of course, it makes reference to Montfort, so we know this was written sometime after 1988. But the Britton brothers in 1882, Benjamin Joseph from Canada, they ran the business and then closed it in 1916 for financial reasons, sold in 1919 to Robert and Oak. They closed it a year later because of labor problems. In the Depression, they opened it again in 34, spent $300 million remodeling. There was a big parade, etc., related to that at an open house. We got 3 photos I'll show you in a minute. And then it was sold to Swift in 1938, who owned it until 1988 when Montfort Pork took over. So here is the plant during the remodeling. You can see some construction worker stuff. You can see sheds back here marking hog receiving. There's that power plant stack. So here is obviously the open house day with all the free food. So they drew quite a crowd. And then this is an ad that Swift had published in 1945 showing the plant and 45 making reference, of course, to feeding the soldiers. So, towards the tail end of the war. And this was, I did something on meat trains one time, and the Chicago Great Western ran meat trains out of the Omaha area, and then number 92 came from Kansas City, St. Joe, Des Moines, Marshalltown, Waterloo. So it picked up meat in Marshalltown from the Swift plant. So they, because they were a joint operator of that line, that's how they would have gotten the meat. And you can see Marshalltown here is on that green line. They hold it up to Waterloo. Waterloo is a major staging point for meat trains on through Old Wayne to Chicago. So this is a story from the Marshalltown Times in 1953. This is about Marshall Packing Company, early industrial slaughterhouse, but this says references 20 years ago. I found an earlier date of 1930. The Marshall Packing Company joined the Marshalltown ranks. Marshall products regularly sold in a demand trading area extending 60 miles from Marshalltown, but it's mostly a hometown ownership, management, etc. And in 53, they spent money on livestock, blah, 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 purchasing power. But their brand name was Marpico brand. I've never heard of that, but it says to ask for Marpico brand meats for Marshall Packing Company. This was across the tracks from the Swift plant. And here's a photo of the Marshall Packing Company. They operated from 1930 to 1985. They slaughtered primarily cattle, but also some hogs. The building still stands as now Marshall Cold Storage. So they probably are utilized by the meat packing plant as a storage facility. Here's an early ad I found also for the Marshall Packing Company. You can see a couple of their refrigerator trucks backed up there. And of course, the vintage automobiles for the employees. And then this is another, this was a newspaper article talking about, you know, there's that photo of the plant, their brand name products they sold, and then a photo of the company, Dean Garland and Dick Keemer, past president of the Chamber of Commerce, inspecting carcasses there at the plant. So, they're a free public barbecue. That's why the story. So, and then of course there was Heilmann's packing plant, which primarily was a sausage maker, and they also were across the tracks from the Swift plant. So a variety of packing plants in there. We come down the line and we have the Marshall Elevator Company. This was also an ad. Marshall Elevator Company, they were affiliated with BP Feeds. This was their office building. They built a large storage building back behind them. And they had another building in here. And you can see the spout here for loading cars. Oh, I'm sorry, I got the pointer on the wrong screen. There's the spout. There's that big storage building. There's their office. This is after 56 because we have a red stop sign. So this is that office building. You can see the building behind it. And then this is that big corrugated iron storage building that they put up. The grain elevator itself is gone, but these buildings still exist with the Koppel Grain Company. So, and this is my version of that grain elevator and a model on my layout. I took this in Colo, but it's pretty much the same, hasn't changed much. Got a storage building here, office building, a nice little corrugated iron covered building with, you know, some tracks and details. So let's see. Oh yes, the Ketchum Wagon Works Company Works. Before it was the Marshalltown Syrup and Candy Shop, this was a Ketchum Wagon Works and later Marshalltown. And you can see where they had warehouses and lumber stacks and stuff over here before the foundries were built. So, and you can see the fairgrounds marked across from them. This is the start of the switchback. It was extended into here when this all became Marshalltown Trowel. So here is an overhead photo of that. You can see the gray is that original building. You can see where the extensions were built out and they had a power plant in there. And this was North American Van Lines at the time that this photo was taken. And they had garages here for storing their trucks, etc. But you can also see this is all Marshalltown Trowel, and you see the addition that's been built between the two buildings. So, and then of course, here's the tracks running up the alley, and here is the foundry buildings now over here. So here's another aerial view. These I got from, can't think of his name. He worked for Marshalltown Trowels now, and then had moved to Arkansas and got together with him. He let me scan stuff that he had saved. Anyway, you can see where that switchback comes in through here, and then switches back between these buildings all right in here. These are two of the original Marshalltown Trowel building. Here is that Sawtooth building, the Lennox Foundry. This is expansion of Marshalltown Trowel. There is the syrup buggy building. And this of course is all part of the foundry area. So it gives you a pretty good clue. And then you can see the main track going up this way, and you can see that track going out and around to reconnect going up that alley. Here's again just a map to refresh your memory. The buildings changed quite a bit through the years. Here is Marshalltown Trowel's website. Right. You can see they originally had a small, looks like a house type building. This was their main offices, and you can see those other two buildings that were angled. The tracks ran down between them behind this house. Here's a color photo of that same building. And here is another shot. You can see, can't quite make it out in this photo, but the tracks are right back here, running between these buildings. And it looks like they got an old boiler sitting here for some reason. And here you can see the tracks going down between the buildings. And I saw a photo inside their offices that had a tank car down here. It looks like that's a tank car at the end. So, and yeah, okay, here's that tank car. See how close that is to the pole? You wouldn't want to be riding that car. So, and it looks like maybe they've torn this building down now. But these were brick, clear story windows, wood construction, brick towers. So now let's go down to, oops, I lost my feed again. Are you seeing a blank screen or are you seeing?
We're seeing your screen, 21 and 20.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, we can see the maps of,
There we go.
yeah.
You got, now, okay, this is, here you can see the Great Western's turntable. You can see their stockyards and the Northwestern stockyards. Here you can see it's just a 2-stall engine house. Stockyards are still there. You can see how the Lennox Machine Company later built the foundry building. That's what this clear story roof is showing. And then this was the Bierston Brothers Bottling Company, which was a local soda pop of some sort. So, and then you can see the Marshall canning when it was a canning company. So let's take a closer look down here. Here is a later photo, or no, this is of the canning when this was an ongoing canning operation. I think this photo is probably from the early 30s. Here we've got a gun with some chutes coming out to it and a smokestack here. You can see the interchange track between the Northwestern and Great Western. Oh, didn't mean to do that on you. But this was quite a large complex in here. And again, this stopped being a cannery and became Marshall Manufacturing. They made valves and parts, probably again for Lennox furnace, and then it became something else. So depending on the era you're modeling. Now up here, you see the Great Western coming in. You can just see their coaling tower. The base of their coaling tower here is probably blocked by this. I got a ribbon across the top there showing things. But this is where the Great Western serviced their steam engines, was up in this area. And of course, Lennox furnace was on past the curve. So let's go to, here is a map. This is a Chicago Great Western map from 1965 showing this is their main line coming in. Here's where the Lennox furnace company was built, starting with their first building in 1912. But you can see that they had their access coming in here. You also see where the spur was built that served the Corn Belt Oil Company, later something else. And here's the Great Western's depot. So you can see there's been changes occur, of course, the fairgrounds. Here we've got another aerial shot. You can clearly see the clear story sawtooth roof and then the original foundry building. Here you can see the county or city garage or whoever and what was the fairgrounds. And just see at the top of the picture is what it is, Lennox furnace. This, of course, is all the Marshalltown trowel complex here. So
Say, Doug,
yes.
back when I was a kid, that Northwestern stockyards burned out. And my aunt took me over there. This would be in the 50s. And all these hogs had been cooked. They were all laying there split open because they, like if you put a hot dog in the microwave too long. It was not something for a 5-year-old kid to see, but we went down and looked at it.
I thought maybe she took you over there to admonish you for playing with matches.
Yeah, that would do it. And also where that Great Western Engine House was, that's where they kept their switch engine, and they had a tank car up on stilts there for the fuel, to fuel the thing.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, as you go through the configuration of the Sanborn maps and other railroad maps that Roger has provided me, it's amazing the changes that took place in that little triangle. Just all kinds of changes, so. Let's move. Here's another aerial photo giving you a better look at what's happening. Again, these all came out of the Marshalltown trowel. I can't think of the guy's name anyway, but you can see some of the foundry work and other things were up in there. There's quite a heavy industry and then a lot of housing around there. So,
Hey, Doug,
yes.
go back to that one picture. The back one.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
That'll be all right. Yeah, that. It's basically all gone, and the main trial building is there, but they tore all that stuff down and built a whole new building. Up to
I
Main
was,
Street.
yeah, I was looking at some, the Google aerial photos, and that's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, they
So-
tore everything down all the way down to that white building. That brick
All the way
building.
down to here.
Yeah, that
Right.
one building,
Ah,
that one building, they couldn't buy that property, so it's still there, but all that's gone.
I knew this was all gone.
Yeah, all the way up this way, these houses, that bar, all that is completely tore out, and they built a brand new place, really. They
Now
did.
you mentioned that, I remember driving through there a couple years ago looking and I couldn't find anything that I wanted to take pictures of.
The only thing that's still there on the other side of the fairgrounds is the old bleachers over
Okay,
there. That's the only thing that's left.
wow.
The city and the county bought all that property and they put
Mm.
in their garage
Yeah,
and shop and that.
And when you consider how much industry was in there from the meatpacking plant to the foundries to et cetera, that's quite a change.
I've sat in those bleachers.
Ah, okay. Well,
My
here's,
grandfather, we lived up on Fourth, so we only lived 4 blocks from here. And
Yeah.
my grandfather would take me down to watch the like the Joey Chitwood shows, the race,
Sure.
the car
Right.
guys.
Yeah,
they would
jumping
do
over
all the-
cars and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all the stunt stuff. It was really fun for a kid.
Oh, yeah, I can remember seeing those too when I was a kid. So, yeah, because this was the fairgrounds at one time. This is
And
Lennox Furnace, Lennox, and this is the new building. This is the building they built in 1912. This bridge is the Chicago Great Western going across here at one time. But
The railroad ran, essentially, it was like the Grand Trunk. If it ran through.
I didn't quite catch that. Was that Ken speaking?
Yeah, I think he must have been talking to somebody else because now he muted.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I won't worry about him. We'll move on. And yet here's another aerial photo again, Marshalltown trowel prominent, but you can gives you a pretty good idea of what was in this south end of this area. And of course, construction going on there.
That one building has an extraordinary amount of stuff on its roof.
Isn't it? Yeah, let me back up here. Let's see what yeah. Yeah, this is all the Marshalltown trowel. And then here's another shot of it. Just look at all those ventilators and vents and
Well,
openings and
Walters will love you when you buy all their property.
Yeah.
yeah. And then I love the clear story here along this building, angled with a 45 in there. And you've got a bump out here and the more probably translucent skylight type of panels. So, and you can see how narrow this space was when the tracks were still in here. And of course, they filled it in with a building. You can see where the tracks ran to tie into this line here. So this line is still served by the railroad, Union Pacific now, serving the meatpacking plant. And of course, yeah, I mentioned this Great Western. This track, the Great Western's all gone. So
Didn't
Here
that-
is, these are some photos Ron took of that, what he calls the sawtooth roof. You can see the slant and then the straight. This is looking this is looking from the southeast corner at this building from the street. And then here's another shot. You can, from the tracks, you can see this building and the next one. That this was all being used by McGregor Furniture as storage when I was there. So, and this is the building for the Corn Belt Oil. It has a different name now, but this building was still standing on that property. Now here's a shot of the Marshall Canning again. I showed you that once, I'm sorry. Here's a shot, a later shot. This is in the 50s. You see the buildings are still there, but it's now something else. And of course I call it the Marshalltown Y. And you can see Emmett St. L here and Northwestern here. Here we've got, looks like Gerbich has started moving in. The scrapyard here is taking over the Northwestern stock pens. Although that could be a sale barn, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, it gives you an idea of the changes that take place. And this is another photo of Ron from a few years ago, looking south right into the scrapyard. This would be the Northwestern line coming up in here. So, and let's see, to get back to what I'm doing with this, the modeling it, this is my schematic that I make available to the operators who come. And of course, this is the track that goes around the bend into the yard. And we've got a diamond here, and you can see the switchbacks. And you can see the turnouts going everywhere in here. So you go up in there with half a dozen cars, you got to have them on the right end of the locomotive, and you're going to be there for a while. Because it's a pretty compact switching layout, which makes it a lot of fun in my opinion. Here's an early photo. Let's see. Oh, this is from the Colo house. I had a youngster that day playing with all my pogs. And of course, a cardboard box for the Swift plant. Because this was in Colo, and I had a Swift plant on loan from someone else. And of course, my famous blue insulated chunks with names written on them. Gives you an idea of looking down the peninsula, a side view of the peninsula. I was playing with some structures and ideas. And now I have a brief video, which I don't think we're going to hear the sound, but this is what my current layout today. This, you can see where I've run a main line down the front of this peninsula to circle around over to this side. And then we've got a passing siding in here that has the lead coming off up into the peninsula. You can see my world famous oil jobber tanks and other things, but let's see what we've got. No, you're not going to get the sound, but so I'll narrate, but you can see where the caboose is. We're going to come back up in here. Looking at, building parts and pieces, etc. This comes back into the manufacturing, but there you can see the diamond I put in and the turnouts on either side of it. This is, of course, the fairgrounds area. This is the Marshalltown manufacturing, and these tanks will eventually become the oil jobber. He will just be served from the other side there. So that. And this, of course, is the Fisher governor controls. Kit bashed a couple little buildings in there to fit. This is just a standalone building, but here's the grain elevator complex. It's been changed from the previous photo. You can't see the backside. This will become the Marshalltown storage or moving company storage building that I'm in the process of kit bashing from some kits. And of course, the main line, I'm showing that. Back in here would be the scrap yard. I mentioned You can see how the tracks. The turnouts are all number 4s in here. That was the only way I could get it all to fit in 12 feet. So. And you know, playing with some different things here to some building mock-ups and fronts that I've been purchasing. And of course, the Marshall elevator, I was able to capture those signs from that photo and put them on the elevator itself. We're kept bashing a Walters flour mill into something. Come down to the meat packing plant. This is the Walters plant spaced out. Stock pens will be along there. We'll playing with something in this area, the clean out track and etc. Here, of course, will be Heilman sausage and Marshall packing. And then the concrete blocks work will just be down here at the end of this spur. And then I know one of the maps showed an oil jobber, so I need to get some of my yellow tanks in there yet. So then we go, well, it was a jerky. I did this quick with the phone the other day. But I've also realized this was a home area, so we're going to have a street with some small building fronts for grocery store and things like that, an apartment complex, and maybe you can see where the tracks curve around. But I'm playing with the idea of extending this one track down. I like the idea of the quarry operation down here in the river bottom. So I may just have to put that in back in here somewhere. One more thing to give some operator a headache to, oh, I got to shove 2 cars down there and pick up a gon of sand along with everything else. So. But that gives you a picture and flavor. I know a couple of you have been here to operate on this or in the previous configuration. There is my drawing that's hanging up there for the poor operators. There's also one hanging in the yard so that they can make their train up. And that ends that. And that, my friends, is the end of the program. So
All right.
we'll
Last
stop
week-
share. And I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah,
That was good.
Thanks,
couple of-
Doug.
a couple of weeks ago when we looked at the sandboard maps, it's amazing the difference the sandboard maps showed versus how the railroad showed what it was going on.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, Roger has made available to me, I've probably got a half a dozen different maps from 1890s up through 1965 from the Northwestern and the Great Western that includes that industrial line and the changes. And so I model 1949, so that's pretty much what I'm trying to focus on. That's when those foundries were pretty active. Marshalltown Trowel was active in there, the cement plant, the meat packing plant. And, you know, those are good industries and they're fun to model. And there's a variety of cars that will be going in there, from flats and gons to reefers and tank cars and box cars. So it's, and it would make a good switching layout. If someone just had a wall in a garage or a spare room with, do the Bob Willer battleship staging yard with a couple of tracks on it. You can move on wheels out of the way and run a train in and out of there. You would have a little fun switching that, particularly if you forgot to put the car on the correct end of the locomotive. So. Yeah,
Very
so-
good. Well, thank you very much, Doug. I don't think we have anybody scheduled for next week, but so if you want to present, let me know, and we'll put you on the list. But that was really fun, Doug. Appreciate you doing that. Ken presented last week, and that recording is now up on the YouTube channel. So check that out if you missed it, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Greg, one quickie. I wanted to, you've started to add the archive access when you send it out under your name. I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Great idea. Where you can just now click
Okay,
on the
thanks.
archives when you send out the email. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. You're welcome. My pleasure. All right, everybody have a great night. We'll see you next
Okay.
week.
Yep, take care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.